one. I'd like to be respectful of everyone's time, so we'll go ahead and get started. First, I want to thank you all for, again, joining us on the bi-weekly call for our systems. This call is intended for our transportation systems within North Carolina and not for the press. It will be recorded for those who are unable to join us at this time. As always, if you have questions during the presentation, you may enter them into the chat box, and at the very end, we will also have additional time for questions. Today, we will go ahead and give you another update on the CARES Act implementation, a brief reminder about the ROPE report due date, some information on the fiscal year 22 applications and the schedule, an update on the DHHS funding, also on NC Transit Cares, and finally on the transit electrification project we have going on. Just to go over what we're going to go over on the CARES Act, we've got an update on our application status, claim summary, update on what we're doing with the second CARES Act application, and then just also on mass disbursement. So at this point, we have received all 78 applications submitted in EBS. 69 of those applications have fully executed agreements, which means that every one of those 69 is able to submit claims. I do want to go ahead and thank everyone who has been submitting claims. At this point, we have 37 claims submitted. 20 of those have been approved for payment, and this equates to about $3.6 million. I do encourage you, if you have an agreement in place, to submit reimbursements as you are able to develop claims, just so we can reinforce the need for the CARES Act funding moving forward. As we said last week, we are submitting our second application for 5311 funding under the CARES Act. We had hoped to include all 4 of these categories, the 5307 subrecipients, the Appalachian, intercity, as well as additional funding for the transit systems. Unfortunately, due to some difficulties in submitting the application, the only 2 that have been submitted by to FTA at this point are the additional funding to the transit systems. This funding is going to still be the same level as what was shared to you via email last week. It's just that we were not able to apply the intercity and Appalachian money. That will be done at a later time. And then also the 5307 subrecipient application has been submitted. As soon as we hear back from FTA that those applications have been approved, we will let you know, even if it's not during a normal weekly scheduled time. For those of you who are receiving 5311 additional funds, that will require a modification in EBS. As a reminder, the second CARES Act disbursement was basically based on the sum total of the ROPE funding that for counties, assuming a normal appropriation of $18.6 million, the fiscal year 20 SMAP amounts, and then the fiscal year 21 application totals for 5310, 5311 operating, rural state operating, and concept. As another reminder, this is the formula that we use to come up with those allocations. It still means that you're under the same requirements and limitations to CARES Act funding as previously. So it needs to be 5311 eligible trips. Oops. We also this week, big shout out to Kevin of my staff. He was able to package up all of the 5311 mask requests and had them sent out earlier this week. We did determine or discover that the small urban systems did not receive direct shipments of masks from FTA, and we do have masks remaining. So we are surveying the small urban systems. for the remaining masks, and we will be sending those out shortly. FTA has also asked, if possible, if you have any pictures of the masks being in use or people wearing masks in general, they would appreciate that, just so they have an idea of how people are, utilizing masks on transit and, encouraging proper social distancing and safety measures. As a reminder, the rope report was extended. The new due date is July 31st, which is this Friday. So please make sure that you get that report submitted on time. The fiscal 22 application call for projects, the application will be posted late August. It will be due late November. And the webinar dates for, if you have any questions or to determine how to apply, the first one is August 20th from 1 to 3 p.m. The second one is August 27th from 10 a.m. to noon. And the registration will be through Smartsheets. Look for an email here shortly on the registration information for Smartsheets. As a reminder, we talked about this again briefly last meeting. There is some funding through DHHS for CARES. This is $5 million to be used in Tier 1 rural counties. We did have a meeting with those eligible systems on July 23rd. That meeting was recorded. If you were unable to attend that meeting and would like to have some information or be able to listen to the broadcast, the link is here. Blair also sent it out to you via email. If you have any questions, about that after reviewing that meeting, please let us know. We are hoping to finalize the procedure with respect to this funds as soon as possible. And we will share with you the amounts as well. We also, on July 22nd, it was a busy day, had the NC Transit Cares kickoff meeting. It was very successful, well attended with, I think, some great presentations and discussions. It also was recorded. So if you were unable to join us, there was an email sent out July 27th with both the slides and the recording link. And please let us know as we continue if you have any additional feedback regarding this project. One of the things that we heard a lot was ideas or questions about, contactless fare systems and things like that, and innovations to help improve social distancing during the time of COVID and make our systems more resilient. So I think it was a great kickoff. And just to remind you, that was our first meeting. We have our second meeting September 9th from 9 to 11 a.m. And then we will have the final meeting November 4th from 9 a.m. to noon. And we are going to continue to be gathering information ongoing, and we will develop at the very end a library of best practices and ideas and actionable recommendations for projects and programs, whether that be internal to NCDOT or projects that we can do to help improve transit in North Carolina. One of the other activities that we have ongoing right now is looking at transit electrification. We have a meeting August 20th, so please mark your calendars, from 10 to 11:30 a.m. This meeting is to go over funding opportunities to look at electrifying your fleet. We will be going over both CMAQ for those systems that are in CMAQ eligible counties, as well as funding that's made available from Volkswagen. Finally, we will also be providing some information about green financing and other financing options to help look at converting your fleet over to electric. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it back over to Blair in case there's any questions. Okay, so the first question is, can you provide an update on the NC DOT cash flow and state grant agreements that are being held up because of cash flow reviews, specifically interested in fiscal year 21 ride share agreements? Great question, Scott. I'm happy to say that most of those are moving forward. And we actually have received permissions from legal to move forward on all FTA grants, as well as the TDM program, regardless of the cash flow. So we should be seeing that shortly. They have developed a new smart sheet to process all applications or all requests for cash and agreements. And so I have put the TDM as well as those federal grants into that sheet. So I'm hoping to hear something favorable by the end of this week. As soon as we hear something, if you are one of those entities, we'll let you know as soon as possible to move forward. But again, with respect to the federal grants, we have received approval to move forward on those regardless of where we are with respect to the cash flow, and same thing with TDM. So we will be moving forward on that as well. August 20th electrification meeting, is that for all systems including 5307 direct recipients? That is for anybody within North Carolina. So we're hoping to get as many systems that are interested in electrification, that are interested in that, to participate. So whether you be a small, more rural system, that is trying to think about how they could even possibly do that, or if you're a larger system that has already looked into doing electrification, we're hoping to get people involved from all sizes and types of systems. Can administrative salary be claimed under 5311 CARES? I believe the answer to that is yes. Tammy, are you on? I mean, that's salaries can be covered under 5311.
Yes, they can be.
So the answer to that is yes. November 27th is the Friday after Thanksgiving. What will the actual date be? That's a good question. I did not notice that. So we will look at that date and perhaps shift it one way or the other, because that would not be a good time to have that meeting. We will let you know. How much of the rural monies to include phase 2 has now been dispersed out of the 90 million in rural cares funds? I don't have the number off the top of my head right now. I mean, the initial allocation was, if you recall, was approximately 20 million. In this second phase, we're asking for, again, it's approximately 26 million. So of that, that's how much we have actually allocated. We are still trying to hold back some of the funds for the third phase to look at needs-based, because there's definitely going to be some differences with respect to needs-based versus using a formula, which is what we've used for the first two phases. But we can give you, we'll actually type out the totals for that. We'll update that on the update to the questions. Since ROPE funding was zeroed out of the state budget, are they saying there's no mandate to provide those programs? I don't believe that's what their intent was. My understanding with them zeroing out the ROPE payments is they thought that most of the CARES Act funding could be used to pay for those similar services. And we are still investigating opportunities and ways of us being able to at least help support both SMAP and ROPE moving forward with remaining state funds. Can equipment lease, radio installation, background costs, drug screening be claimed under 5311 CARES? Tammy, that would be a question for you. And if you don't have the answer right now, we can look into it further.
Well, if it's considered an operating cost or preventive maintenance, then yes, it can be claimed under 5311 CARES.
All right. Any update on when we may begin to receive the admin and capital contracts? I'm assuming that they're referring to the normal 5311 admin and capital contracts. So Tammy, do you have an update on the schedule? My understanding those were submitted. So where are we on that process?
I believe they're pending for contracts and signatures from the state for the state money.
Okay. So my understanding is at that point we now have permission to move forward on that. So we will go ahead and do what we need to do on our end to get those moving forward. Next question. We have been informed that NCDOT delays include local municipal agreements and effective May 2nd until further notice. NCDOT won't be executing agreements. Will this impact contracts for 5303, 5307, 5310 rope, subrecipient agreements, etc.? So again, this is kind of reiterating what I said above. We have received permission just this week from legal to move forward on all federal grants regardless of the cash flow situation with respect to NCDOT. So we have received approval to move forward on all agreements for 5307, 5303, 5310, and any subrecipient agreements. Again, with respect to rope, that's been zeroed out, so we won't be distributing any rope payments this fiscal year. However, we did allow both SMAP and rope to move forward. So those will, continue to be able to be used until expended. It should probably be clarified that if admin salaries are claimed under CARES, they cannot be claimed under regular 5311 grant. That is the case for anything. So if you are claiming expenditures under CARES, they cannot be claimed under normal 5311. If you're claiming them under normal 5311, they cannot be claimed under CARES. So basically, you have to choose one or the other with respect to submitting claims. So let's see, next question. Did you report earlier in this meeting that there will be a call for projects? This is for vehicle matches, advanced technologies, and the apprentice programs. Carolyn, are you on what all the call for projects is covers?
Yes, I'm on. The call for project will include all of our standard grants, but I can't really see the ones listed, but urban state match is questionable at the moment because of the availability of funding. Same thing with apprenticeship and internship. And advanced technology, we are not doing that grant because what is eligible in that application can be asked for in the capital grant.
Thank you. And we will go ahead and in answer to that question, we talked about it last week. I didn't have the slides up this week to say what grants those were applying for, that call for projects, but we will go ahead and list those out in this answer block as well. Okay. Should we delay rope program implementation until we know how they will be funded? I'm not sure exactly how to answer that question. If there's anybody else on the line who can answer that question, I'll leave it open to them. If not, we'll get back to you or get some clarification on that.
Heather, this is Carolyn.
Mm-hmm.
Those counties that had unspent funds, then they should use them because they do expire. The June 30th, 2021. So the reason you allowed and have the policy created was so that they could keep them and continue using them. If they have the funds, they should use them.
Right. So if that's what your question is, I mean, if not, if you could add some additional information, that would be helpful. All right, so next question here. Grant agreements were sent out today for local signatures. Outs received the fiscal year 21 CT today to start the process of signing the contract. So I think that's more of a statement than a question, so that's great to hear. Has the required mileage for vehicle replacement changed, or is it still 100,000 miles? Tammy, can you answer that?
It's still 100 at the end of June 30th.
Thank you. CARES Act is until expended. Contract has period of performance end date of 6/30/21. If all's CARES Act has not been expended, will a period of performance be extension granted? We will have to. I mean, because obviously you're correct in that CARES Act is available until expended. So we'll do whatever we need to do to extend it past that time if it's not all used up. CARES will cover rope expenditures as long as you are providing all services under general public services. No need to wait unless you have to wait on CARES amended agreement. That is the case. So as long as you are providing services that are considered general public services, then you can go ahead and move forward. We will be providing you, or you have been provided what your amendment amount is. Obviously, we have not received approval for those funds yet, but if you have an agreement in place and you have eligible expenditures that would fall under 5311 or rope type services that are for rural general public, please go ahead and submit those claims. We're up to the amount that you have been, that your agreement is for, because we definitely want to show that these funds are needed. And the best way to do that is to, submit claims and get reimbursement for them. CARES Act covers operating costs. Does this include replacement camera systems for our vehicles? I believe this again would come under, depending on what the fraction of the cost of the new cameras would be in relationship to the total bus. So it's a fine line between whether it's an operating cost or whether it's capital. Right now, all funds that we have obligated are for operating only, not for capital. Just to remind you again, we had hoped that there would be remaining funds in the third or later distributions to do a capital investment, but at this point, everything is for operations. Did you want to add anything to that, Tammy?
No.
I will.
Okay.
It's Myra. I will. It falls under capital. According to
It would be under capital? Okay.
It will be
Thank
under
you.
capital.
So at this point, what we have agreed to with our FTA application is just operating. So any camera replacements would have to be during that third or subsequent distributions of funds. Okay. CARES and 5311 require general public trips. That is correct. So both CARES and 5311 require it to be a general public trip open to everybody. Will the period of performance be extended for fiscal year 21? Grant contracts that were delayed because of the state's temporary freeze from May last week, end of July, on executing contract agreements since there will be a delay in receiving the funds. Tammy, do you want to speak to that?
No. I mean, yes, I'll speak to it, but no, there won't be, the period of performance won't be extended for FY21 because the year just started July 1st. And the POP goes back to July 1st. Myra, am I answering that correctly?
That is correct. That is correct.
Thank you. I was on
Okay,
mute.
that's fine. So next question, our second round of CARES won't cover rope and CARES expenditures both. And, you know, if that's the situation that you're facing right now, what I would again suggest you do is contact us so we can keep track of this. One of the things that we have committed to doing within IMD is continue to collect data from our transit systems because the impacts to systems varies depending on system to system. And we, you know, the only way we're going to be able to demonstrate the additional need to legislature is through the collection of data. Additionally, that third distribution will be needs-based, and so similar information will need to be provided as well. So you can provide us, you know, whatever you need, whether it be a narrative. At this point, we will obviously be using a more formal basis, but the legislature is coming back into session in September. So we are continuing to collect data, continuing to collect information from systems to help support that narrative of the need for SMAP and rope. What will happen if we have to discontinue certain services to the public if CARES isn't enough to cover? I am not sure if I have the ability to answer that question. I mean, obviously, that's what we're hoping to prevent. You know, I think the services that transit provides is very important to the public. And this is, again, you know, one of the reasons why we encourage you to continue to work with your association to indicate why this CARES Act funding is so important, you know, for these services. So other than that, I would just say continue to work with your associations, continue to, you know, lobby the legislature and talk about how important it actually is.
Heather, this is Carolyn. Can
Yep.
I add something to that?
Yep.
Because this question came up just in general purposes. If a major service reduction were going to be made, the FTA does have, on their website, does have information such as a public hearing would need to be conducted. So if you're looking at that, like discontinuing a route or something major, make sure you're covered with that. And again, you can look on the FTA's website and put in the search box major service reduction, and you should get some information on that.
Thank you, Carolyn, for that additional information. There was some additional information. This was specifically for RGP and employment. We are supposed to be open to general public. So again, if you're open to the general public, you know, your CARES Act funding should be able to, you know, pay for those trips. Okay, so systems were originally told the plan was to use the second call for CARES Act to be capital. While I understand that some systems need that call for projects to be operating, some systems budgeted and planned, expecting to be able to make capital purchases. Is there a way that this can be beneficial to either need systems may have? So again, when we had the original plan, we had no idea that we would have, you know, SMAP and rope, you know, zeroed out. So we needed to quickly come up with a formula to apply for additional funds. And because it's an amendment, not a new agreement or new application to FTA, we were held to the same line items as what we had previously submitted, which was just operating. So if you have a capital need that you think is not going to be covered or is not going to be covered under normal FTA requirements or offerings, please reach out to us directly. Our primary focus at this point was to ensure that there was funds sufficient for operating costs. Can CARES funds be used for safety modifications, physical modifications, shield, et cetera, to buses? My understanding is yes, as long as it's not a major modification. Things like the plexiglass shields, the shower curtains, things like that would be coverable under like the PPE category. So the answer to that would be yes. Will CARES Act pay for ETAP trips? Okay, EdTap, okay. That's the elder, that's one of the ones that's a little bit tricky because typically the elderly and disabled, if it's open just to elderly and disabled, then the answer would be no. However, if you are using the same bus to transport both elderly and disabled along with general public, then the answer would be yes. So it really depends on how your system does their trip making. So if anyone can ride on any trip, regardless of what their funding type is, then it should be eligible. So I'm not seeing any additional questions. We'll go ahead and give everyone a couple more minutes just to make sure. Okay, this is not a question, but a suggestion. So when the CARES Act change order is approved, written instructions as to the RGP requirement should be in the cover letter. So Myra, Tammy, just I guess take note of that when we get to that point. Give everyone just a couple more minutes to make sure there's not any additional questions. Okay, not seeing any additional questions. We'll go ahead and wrap it up for today. As a reminder, our next call will be August 12th. If we receive any information with respect to approval on any of the FTA grants that we have submitted for CARES Act in the middle of those between now and then, We will send out an email to all systems that it affects to let you know so you can go ahead and make those change order requests. Again, I hope you have a wonderful rest of the day and a great remainder of the week. Have a good one.